Preloaders are simply gateways to your website. The right preloader can definitely make your website feel premium and attract the right audience. In this video, I'm going to be sharing how I create preloaders using Framer. Hi everyone, my name is Ozeno Olatobi. I'm a Framer developer and I've been using Framer for the last 2 years. I also create premium website templates on the Framer marketplace. And in this video, I'm going to be helping you create a preloader for your next website. So let's get started. So when you're creating a preloader, there are a few things or there are a few elements you want to plan for or you want to think about. One of them is the brand logo or the brand name. You could either have this as a PNG file or as text. Another would be the progressive bar. Now for some preloaders, you can choose to use a progressive bar, but in other cases, you could also use a counter, counting from 0 to 100 or 0 to 99. Some other designers prefer to just write loading. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you each of these different cases. The first thing I have here is my Framer canvas. I'm going to leave this as it is by default, 1200 in width. Preloaders are typically going to take the full length of your screen, so the height of our preloaders is going to be set to 100 viewport. So I'm going to start by drawing in a frame. I'm going to assume that if you're here, you already know how to use Framer, so I wouldn't really be going through too many details when it comes to using the tool. But instead, I'm just going to show you how to actually create a preloader. So first I have this frame. I'm going to set it to full width and set it to 100 viewport height. So now that I have that, I'm just going to name this preloader. And I'm also going to set it to color black so that we can see what's going on here. After I have this, I would prefer to make this a component so I can easily just walk my way around here. Call this defaults, always name your layers. Now that I have this, I'm going to introduce a container in there. Of course, I'm going to make this layout start like so. Set this to full width, and of course, set this to full height. Now for this particular preloader, we're going to have 2 layers, and each of the layer would reveal what is underneath it simultaneously. So I'll call this the orange overlay, and then I'll duplicate this. Of course, I'm going to set that to orange at first so that we can recognize that like so. And then I'm going to have another one, and then I'll call this white overlay, and then I'll set that to white. So the reason why we can't see this is, of course, because it is currently underneath the orange layer. So if I hide this orange layer, we can see our white overlay. So once we have that, the next thing we want to introduce into the design is our text, the text layer. So I'm going to call this preloader. This is the text we want to have in our preloader. And then I'm going to drag this here like so. So make sure it's at the center. Right. So first things first is we want to have our text animate into the preloader before the backgrounds unravel the content underneath it. So to do that, we're just going to introduce a text animation, and I'm going to use the stagger, and I'm going to make a quick edit and set this offset to 40 like so. And then the animation, of course, is going to play for this amount of time. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so a quick improvement would be to set this to character, so we have it look like this. And maybe we could also make it faster. We could make the animation faster by reducing the time it just takes to play, like so. All right. So now that that is done, we could also reduce this time to about this. So this is what we have here. Right, so now that we have the text animated, the next thing we want to do is simply make the text disappear. Now this is going to happen, then the orange layer is going to reveal what's underneath it. So to do that, what I'm going to do is simply push this up by, say, 40 pixels and set the opacity to 0. And I'm going to then show you guys what that looks like by simply setting the interaction to the next screen, set this to 1 appear, and have that run for just 1 second. This is what that looks like. There you go. There you go. Right. So after that happens, we can then begin to animate the colored layers. So from this to the next screen is going to be delayed for just 0.5 seconds. Set this to 1 appear, and then I can set this to remove the constraint from the bottom, so that way this orange layer is not clipping to the bottom eventually. And then we set this to 1 pixels, like so. And yeah, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so one thing we missed is this should be right there. Cool. So let's start from the beginning and see what that looks like. There we go. All right, so I want this animation to animate faster, so I might have to reduce this. So let's see what that looks like now. Almost there. It's almost there. All right. So of course, the better the animation values, the smoother your animation works. But right now, we would continue then to the next screen, setting the next variant. Of course, we also want to make sure this is linked like this, set it to appear, and also delay this by 0.5. Now, these numbers we're going to like put a balance to. It takes a lot of tweaking to get the right feel for the animation. So we're going to like, play around with these values till we get the perfect animation. Then I'm going to also take this, remove the constraint from the bottom, set the height to 1 pixel, and there, that should do. Now, one thing you would notice is that there's a little orange bleed here. Now, what I do typically is either to just reduce the opacity, I set the orange opacity to 0. That's the first thing to do, and then move it just a little bit to the back by 5 pixels. So that way it's completely out of your screen. We also can do that for this white layer. Let's see. My worry sometimes is that when you do it too early, the layer just disappears rather than slowly animating. So let's play this through and see what that looks like. Awesome, that's perfect. So yeah, it works perfectly. All right, so that is the exact kind of feel we want to have. So if I go then to the home page and I set this to full screen, this is what we get. Super cool. All right, that's amazing. So yeah, that is typically how you create these animations. Now, mind you, you can set the direction of this animation to wherever you want. Right now, I'm setting this to the top. So it simply means if you want to set it to the side as well, you just have to like apply the same concepts to it, but this time around, rather than animating, or rather than pushing the layers to the top, you want to push them to the side. So that's like the next step, and then we're going to talk about the final step in a minute. All right, so now that we have this working, I am then going to demonstrate another way to also have a preloader on your website. So I'm going to go home, and yeah, so I'm just going to duplicate this instead and call it duplicate 2 or preloader 2 as the case may be right now. I'm going to leave everything as it is, but the plan for this is to have like a counter that goes from 0 to 100. Right, so I would remove this. And this time around, rather than using two layers, I'm just going to have one. So I'm going to delete the white layer and get rid of a couple of this. Yeah, get rid of those two. And I'm going to then place this here. So I have a component designed to do that for me. It's a counter component that simply reads from 0 to 100. So this is what that looks like. So in the meantime, let me also get rid of this and show you guys. There you go. So it reads from 0. It reads from 0 to 99. Now this component, I created this component using the Framer Workshop. I'm going to like do some other videos showing how I use Framer Workshop to create simple components that really add life to the website. So the way this is designed is you could do a random skip, which simply just randomly picks numbers. There's 0 to 99 and there's 000 to 100, which just introduces 3 characters rather than 2 characters. So there it is. And it also has a duration for how long you want that counter to count for. So if I set this to 5, you know it's going to be much slower before it gets to 100. And also I can set the color. So right now, what we want to do is have this at the bottom right corner. I'm going to put it, some padding there, 20 pixel padding. And then I'm going to also increase that size to say 100 pixels. So it's much larger, like so. And then if I hit on play, you can see it's just going to count to 100, but it's going to then take 5 seconds. Right. So, yeah, there are different animation intervals here. So this also, which you could try out. Yep. And yeah, that is just too slow. So I'm just going to set this back to 2 seconds, meaning an ideal preloader shouldn't take more than 3 seconds, in my opinion. So you want to like pay attention to all that detail. This isn't really the best, so I'm just going to use the first option here that says smooth. Yeah, that is much more, that's as violent as I would want it to be. Right, so now the next thing is to create the second layer where this then hides, and then we can then, reveal what's underneath the background. So I'm going to move this up by a lot and then set the opacity to 0. Also take this to the next screen on up here, and this I would want this to be 1.8 seconds of delay. Now that is because the counter takes 2 seconds to count from 0 to 100. And before it gets to 100, I want it to begin to move up as well. So this is what that looks like. Yeah, like so. So in the last 0.2 seconds, it starts moving up, which is exactly what I want. Now I'm then going to like create a third screen, remove that and set this to appear again. And this time around, I just want this to delay by 0.4 seconds. Now, the reason it's all a bit of math here, this takes 2 seconds to animate. From screen 1 to variant 2 simply takes 1.8 seconds before the animation runs. And I'm only adding 0.2 seconds to then go from this orange screen to this one where we can then set this to 1 and take this back by 5. So altogether, the animation is going to take 2.2 seconds to run. Okay, so let's see what that then looks like. Right. So yeah, that's the animation right there. One thing I want to do is play with this busy a little bit more so I have something more dramatic. So let's see what that looks like. All right, that's too violent. Let me tone that down a little bit. Yeah, I think I like that. So now I'm just going to swap this with Preloader 2, and we can see what this looks like in full screen. And voila, there we go. So one final thing I want to do is show the content underneath the preloader. I'm going to remove that background. We don't want to have any background on this component, so that way we can clearly see what's underneath the preloader on the home page. So I'm going to hide this in the meantime, and then I'm just going to write a text here so we have an idea of if this actually works. Set this to a viewport, call this hero. Of course, move the preloader to the top and set the preloader to absolutes 0, 0. And for here, I'm just going to remove this and write a text here. All right, so I'm going to put this on, and let's see what that looks like. There we go. So yeah, that is how you do that. All right, so for the last and final act, I'm going to show you how to create the progress bar and how to add it to your preloader. Right, so once again, I'm just going to duplicate this preloader, and I'll call that duplicate 3 or preloader 3. And this time around, I'm still going to keep the counter. Just going to send it to the top this time around, like so. And I am going to add a frame here. Send it to the bottom and also make sure it is about 10 pixel thick, like that. All right, so this is going to be the progress bar. And similarly, I'm going to have to make this a component progress bar. I'm going to remove that white background, and I'm just going to have to create another frame inside of it, and that's like the bar itself. This main here is just going to be the trail where the bar is going to pass through. All right, so they're just going to be two states, the first state and the second state. So for state 1 is the empty state, for variant 1 is the empty state, and the way this is going to work is this is also going to be 1 pixel in width, and I'm going to send it, to the back by 5 pixels. Of course, make sure this is also set to overflow is set to clip so that we can see that there. Maybe we should just make this -1. Yeah, so it's starting right at that point. Now for the second variant 2, I'm just going to grab this guy and send it all the way to 0, like so. You can also choose to set this one to 0. It doesn't really matter at this point. And the way it works is we want to move from this to the other. Now to test this out, I'm just going to set an interaction on appear with this delay of 0.21. So if you play that, yeah, that doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? All right, be a few reasons, one of which might include because this is out of view, so I'm going to set this to 0. So it is in view, but just partially. And if I play that on appear, oh, my bad. I hadn't set it to go to the second variant. Now, if that's the case, then I might as well just send this back to -1, and then let's see what happens then. And there you go. Right, so it works now, but one thing I want to fix is the time it takes to play the animation. I'm going to set it to 1.5, so it takes 1.5 seconds to do that. So yeah, so that is way smoother. So that is exactly what we need. So yeah, so now I'm going to go back here to Preloader 3, and we can then prototype this to see what it looks like. All right, so as you can see here, the progress bar finishes its animation in 1.5 seconds, but this counter finishes it's in 2 seconds. So you want to go back to that progress bar and set that time to 2 seconds as well. So by the time we play this, the animation finishes at the same time. How long? This takes 2 seconds. It's taking more than that, apparently. All right, so that is pretty much it. It's all about timing. The majority of the time, you just have to get the time right. I'm going to set this to all zeros, so this looks even better. Yeah, that's much better. All right, so finally, how do we then get rid of this once the animation is complete? Simply, we could drop it by 1 and then set the opacity to 0. And then if we then play this, we should get this animation. All right, so of course, this still appears on the third screen, so we want to make sure we send it down as well here. So that way, all is good. All right, so that little lag, we actually do not want that. And the reason why that is happening is because it's revisiting the previous state from here. We don't want that to happen. So, and that is why you just have to plan out your animations so that you can, set the states all at once instead of going back and forth like we've done. Yeah, I guess that solves it. The loader completes its run, the timer completes its run, and everything animates as it should be. So yeah, that is it. I've shown you guys 3 different ways to create a simple preloader animation for your website. One final thing is, so let me just show you. A good lot of the time after this is done, an ideal behavior for preloaders is that even whenever the preloader is counting, it's not supposed to move. You shouldn't be able to scroll. As you can see, this is still scrollable. So you want to make sure that scrolling does not happen. And the only way to get that done is to lock down the preloader. I have a code override prepared for that particular purpose, and I'm going to show you right now. Right. So what we're looking at right now is a custom code specifically designed to lock the preloader. That way, the scroll does not happen if the preloader, for as long as the preloader is still active, the scroll will not happen. And here is where you set your timer. Now you can ignore every of these code jargon here and focus on here. This is the preloader. Now the 3000 value you see here simply means 3 seconds. Now all you have to do is simply figure out how long your preloader is supposed to run for the entire time. If it's going to run for 5 seconds, if it's going to run for 10 seconds, and simply change this value to that number. Right now, if I'm correct, all the preloaders we've created run for about 3 to 4 seconds. So I can just leave this at 3,500 or 4 for good measure. And that's simply 4,000 milliseconds here simply means 4 seconds. So now that it is done, I can simply apply this lock to all my preloaders, and you'll see that it does not scroll whenever the preloader is running. So I'm going to go home and select this preloader and simply add the code override like so. Now, if I prototype this and try to scroll, yeah, the scroll doesn't work on 4 seconds. So I'm going to play that again. And right now I'm scrolling and the scroll doesn't work. Yeah. So from what I figured out, I think there's an extra second of delay. So I guess the total time of this animation is simply 3 seconds. So I'm just going to like reduce this back to 3 seconds and try that out again. So yeah, I am currently attempting to scroll and the scroll doesn't work until the preloader finishes its run. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for staying through to the end of this tutorial. I would be sharing more tips on some of the things I build. So if you've come across any of my templates or any of the website I've worked on, and there are interesting sections to which you would love me to explain how I have worked on it, please feel free to comment, or you could just, drop a comment on what you want me to work on next. If you find my works interesting, please do well to visit my website, www.fox.supply, to, get a template. And I would love to see what you guys build using these templates. Thank you very much and see you on the next one.